In 1812, Ephraim Thayer and Hannah Taft gave birth to a daughter and named her Bathsheba. Born in Rhode Island, Bathsheba would spend her life living in the northeast United States, eventually finding herself in Connecticut, where she would meet a man named Judson Sherman. The two began to date, and on March 10, 1844, they were married, and she moved on to his farm. In 1851, Bathsheba had a son, Herbert Sherman, her only offspring, at least as far as the public record goes. It is believed that she gave birth to an additional 3 children, 2 more boys and a girl, but none of them lived long enough to ever be reflected in census data. Although there were rumors of Bathsheba being involved in witchcraft and ritualistic sacrifices after an infant in her care died after supposedly being impaled with a sewing needle, there was never any proof. And it was the 1800s. Modern medical science couldn't be depended upon to save a sick child, so Herbert was her only kin to outlive her. She carried on until 1885 when she went into a bout of paralysis that doctors at the time could not identify and never recovered, dying at the age of 73 years old. We can now infer that this incident was possibly related to a stroke. And that's basically the life of the real Bathsheba Sherman. However, the Conjuring
Bro, she named her son Herbert. Ugly eyes.
Character Bathsheba Sherman met a much darker fate. To learn how additional context of Bathsheba's life shaped the malevolent witch's spirit seen in The Conjuring, and how the character may have influenced later events, stick around to the end of this video.
Shout out to CZ's World.
To deal with the Conjuring of demons, much of the lore is based on the grimoire.
I love your content, CZ War. It's because I love this horror shit, I'm not gonna lie.
The Lesser Key of Solomon, which details evil entities like Malthus and Valak. The demon attached to Isla in The Conjuring 3 similarly has occult origins. There are, however, Conjuverse antagonists who are based more on local urban legends. The second is the legend of La Llorona, a ghost from Latin American folklore. But the original is Bathsheba the Witch, who is based on the mysterious New England farm wife that supposedly haunts the old Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island. As always in horror history, I'll be analyzing the timeline. But the timeline of the events of the real Bathsheba Sherman don't match up with the timeline of the movie character Bathsheba, who died 7 days after the birth of her child. So I'm gonna start with one event that is in both timelines, the marriage of Bathsheba Thayer and Judson Sherman. I'll sort all this out on the other side of the horror history screen.
Right on the allergy pill.
In real life, Bathsheba's marriage came in 1844, when she was 31 or 32 years old. In The Conjuring, Lorraine claims that the farmhouse was built in 1863 by Judson Sherman, and the way she says it makes it seem like Judson was married to Bathsheba at the time it was built. I'm assuming this was very shortly after their marriage. Typically, a couple moves in together immediately after marriage, so I'm just gonna call it the same year. Assuming her major life events came at similar ages, that means movie Bathsheba would have been born in about 1831, married in 1863, and had the baby in 1870, which leaves a pretty big gap between marriage and baby. Lorraine's research mentions that Bathsheba was caught by her husband sacrificing the 7-day-old child, but she never says with certainty that that was her first child. I mentioned the real-life Bathsheba being associated with rumors of other children having died young, and thus being excluded from the public record. And I think the movie leaves open this possibility based on the events that play out. Remember, when Carolyn is possessed by Bathsheba's spirit, she's not just targeting one daughter. She starts by going after the middle girl, Christine. It's only after that doesn't work that she tries to get April, the youngest. In the movie, Bathsheba's ties to witchcraft are explained by her lineage. It's stated that she's related to Marytown Esty, who was accused of witchcraft and hung during the Salem witch trials. She is also based off of a real person who lived 200 years earlier. The reason for these witch sacrifices, according to Lorraine, all ties into Satanism. They believed that they were elevating their status in the eyes of Satan. After Bathsheba, or can I just nickname her Bath? After Bath was caught sacrificing her baby, she proclaimed her love to Satan and cursed anyone who would try to take her land and hung herself in the tree outside. But as we know, the story doesn't end there. We're given bits and pieces of the hauntings that would occur from that point forward, and if we put them all together, there's a common theme. In the 1930s, a woman named Mrs. Walker lived there with her son Rory. According to the papers, Rory mysteriously disappeared in the woods, but Lorraine's visions tell a different story, where she can be seen stabbing her son in the cellar before taking herself out of the picture as well. However, a sad final outcry helps explain her behavior.
He made me do it.
Mrs. Walker was possessed to commit her crime by the ghost of Bathsheba. Other ghosts that we've seen in the Conjuring franchise don't have the power to take over somebody's body like this. We've seen it many times with demons, but only this once from the ghost of a witch. Since her sacrifice was done in the name of Satan, it seems like Bath has gained some of this demonic power. Her final proclamation in life cursed anyone who would try to take her land, so when the farmhouse was eventually split up into multiple properties, there were even more victims for her to come after, like the Bledsoe boy, who drowned in a pond accident, and the maid in a neighboring home who slit her wrist. The maid's ghost would echo almost the same line as Mrs. Walker.
That's crazy.
Look what you made me do!
While not much is known about this, there was also a tragic school bus accident that
I
perhaps
ain't gonna lie, I love this Conjuring fucking universe, man. I love this Conjuring universe. I love all the films they put out, man. I love everything about them.
took place on the property and claimed the lives of 4 more children. It seems unlikely that there would be a fatal accident in rural Rhode Island, so I imagine the bus driver, like the others, was not in control of his or her own body at the time the so-called accident occurred. There's one constant that runs through most of these tragedies, and it helps explain part of Bathsheba's motivation. Each of these accidents involves the premature passing of a child. It would seem that the witch's undertaking does not expire in death. The only exception to this seems to be the maid, who looks like a young adult, though it's possible that there's another child disappearance that just doesn't come up in the Warrens' research. If each kid sacrificed moves Bathsheba up in Satan's ranks, it's no wonder that there was a huge opportunity in 1971 when the Perrin family, with their 5 daughters, first moved in to the old Arnold estate.
I want to rewatch this shit over.
It was fall of 1971 when Roger Perrin purchased the farmhouse in an auction from the bank. However, despite Bathsheba's claim that she would curse anyone who tried to take her land, Roger was not the main object of her wrath. Instead, it was his wife, Carolyn, who suffered the most. After spending the first night there, she awakens with bruises after breaking in the new house with her husband, if you know what I mean. This was a new take on the stories written by Andrea Perrin about her family's time in the house. In her trilogy of books, House of Darkness, House of Light, she explains that she feels Bathsheba despised Carolyn in particular, because she saw her as essentially taking over the mother figure in the house, and Bath was jealous.
My mother was never allowed to assume her rightful position as mistress of the house. That's the bottom line. Whatever the spirit was that taunted and haunted my mother so supremely over a decade.
She said so supremely. That's crazy, bro.
Was not willing to relinquish the position. She loathed my mother. She lusted after my father. Lusted. I use that word deliberately.
In the books, Andrea claims that her mother was stabbed in the leg by the spirit with a sewing needle, which is the same weapon supposedly found lodged in the skull of that infant that died under Bathsheba's care. The fictional family also encountered a rancid smell moving around the house, and Bathsheba even went after the family dog. Each paranormal instance would often begin at 3:07 a.m., the official time of death of Bathsheba Sherman. This would continue onto the second night, where the evil witch pulled on Christine's ankle as she slept to terrorize her. It seems that Bathsheba also has the ability to mess with the TV signal and distracts Roger with a series of 3 knocks that send him searching around the house. There may be more than one meaning here. The activity towards Roger never seems malicious, unlike what happens to his wife and daughters. This could be interpreted as Bath trying to play with him, to kind of assume that matriarchal role. Then there's
Yeah, because she said that she lusted after the father. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. A ghost trying to get the BBC. That's tough.
the fact that the knocking comes in 3s, which Ed Warren has his own theory about.
Sometimes it's meant as an insult to the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
If she's trying to make a mockery of a religious concept, this may not actually be the first example. Just look at her name, Bathsheba. Bathsheba was the biblical wife of King David in the Torah. I've been calling her Bath this whole time, but maybe I was focusing on the wrong part of her name and should have been calling her Sheba. This in itself could be a mockery of the Queen of Sheba from the Hebrew Bible. And yes, obviously a baby doesn't name itself, as far as I know, but remember, Bathsheba's ties to witchcraft are said to be passed down by her family.
Ed, she's related to Marytown Esty. She's one of the women accused of witchcraft in Salem. She was hung during the trials.
Now, I don't know if Marytown Esty and Bathsheba Sherman were actually related in real life, but Mary is obviously named after another religious figurehead, the Virgin Mary. And Bathsheba's father, Ephraim, is probably named for Ephraim, the son of Joseph in the Torah. It may not have been the intention of the filmmakers to call attention to this, but I find it interesting nonetheless. And one more thing. If Bathsheba was named after the biblical Bathsheba, that's also significant, because the biblical Bathsheba was also the father of King Solomon. Yes, the same King Solomon from the Lesser Key of Solomon, the demonic spellbook that was the source of lore for the Conjuring 2 and the Annabelle spin-offs. The last incident to...
Basically, demonology, King Solomon, basically, you know what I'm saying, the same person that wrote the Bible wrote demonology too, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I stand correct. I don't feel like looking
to occur on the second night involves Cindy, the second youngest girl, sleepwalking into the wardrobe in Andrea's room.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's oh my gosh. The author. Yeah, that's what it is. It's the author. I forgot his name though. I forgot now.
Do this before.
A lot of Bath's activity is related to this wardrobe, which the family found there upon moving in. The wardrobe is positioned in front of a secret nook behind the wall, where Rory Walker liked to hide when the hauntings got too scary. The area also features a passage down to the cellar, which may have been used for another hanging at some point in the house's history, though we don't have any other details on it. We see Bathsheba use the wardrobe again the next day, when Carolyn is playing hide and clap with the youngest daughter, April. And Bathsheba's hands emerge from it and mislead Carolyn towards that direction, probably hoping to abduct or attack her. It's also on this day when birds start crashing into the house, which might just be another generally creepy thing to happen, or might once again be symbolic of Bathsheba's anti-religious tirade. Since birds are often used as Christian symbols, again be symbolic of Bathsheba.
She looks crazy. Yeah, the dove is represented with religion
As
too.
anti-religious tirade. Since birds are often used as Christian symbols, like how many churches use dove symbols as a connection to the Holy Spirit. The third night features more ankle pulling. Christine is nearly yanked out of bed and sees Bathsheba standing behind her door, but her sister Nancy is unable. Christine is nearly yanked out of bed and sees Bathsheba standing behind her door, but her sister Nancy is unable to see it.
There's someone standing over there. I don't see anyone. It's looking right at us.
Nancy is able to smell the putrid scent associated with the witch though.
Putrid.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think that Bath was a bad nickname. It slams the door shut on them, causing late night calamity in the house. Roger is gone on a job for the next week, over which time Bathsheba inflicts more bruises on Carolyn, leads her around the house at night using sounds, knocks the family pictures off the wall, which again were insulting to Bathsheba because she's jealous of Carolyn being the mother figure, and eventually slams the cellar door shut in a way that knocks Carolyn down into the basement, where more horror ensues.
Bathsheba was a hater. She was a hater. She was hating on Carolyn.
Upstairs, Cindy has another sleepwalking incident, but this is probably just the ghost of
Oh,
Rory
she a
trying
wife.
to protect her. But in this case, the dark presence of Bathsheba has a counterattack. Andrea is lured back to the wardrobe when the knocking sound continues. And Cindy awakens to see a sight that no child could ever forget.
Sure you get straight uppercutting her shit, I promise. I promise.
After more nights of turmoil, Carolyn and Roger enlist the help of renowned paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren on November 1st, 1971. And when
These the OG paranormal. Look, Pete, where they at?
renowned paranormal investigators
Them two right there, OGs of the paranormal game.
Ed and Lorraine Warren on November 1st, 1971. And when Lorraine sees the dark presence latched onto the family, Bathsheba immediately sees her as a threat and begins plotting to how she can ward them off. She latches onto Lorraine, essentially following her home to see what's important to her, and she witnesses her receiving this locket from her daughter Judy. The next night, when the Warrens return to the estate, Ed places holy items around the house to try to draw a reaction out of the spirits. There is some activity at 9:18 p.m. in the cellar, and after they investigate it and find nothing, Bathsheba tries to slam the door on Carolyn, but she's able to jump out of the way. The relentless attacks are really starting to get to her, which I imagine
Is she hating on Carolyn?
is just what Bathsheba planned for.
Damn, Sheba.
I'm exhausted. I'm just gonna take a nap. The late nights they're getting to me.
This leaves her alone and vulnerable, while Lorraine is outside helping with the laundry, and the two make eye contact before Bathsheba attacks Carolyn in her sleep and possesses her body by puking in her mouth. Yeah, if you're not familiar, that's pretty much always how possession is done in the Conjuring movies. When Lorraine makes it upstairs, Carolyn acts like she's fine, so this must be Bathsheba manipulating her and trying to hide from Lorraine. That night, there's another sleepwalking incident, but this time, Lorraine finds the area behind the wardrobe, eventually falling down into the basement cellar. But as she tries to escape, she too is attacked by Bathsheba, which if you think about it, makes sense. Not only is she trying to help the family, but she's also taken on a supportive motherly role.
she a family
For example,
woman too.
she was helping out with laundry while Carolyn was trying to rest. Bathsheba goes for her lockets, the one given to her by Judy, the symbol of their mother-daughter relationship, and basically a threat about who she'll go after if Lorraine and Ed don't back off. It's here that Bath really ups the ante. Holy objects turn face down, and of course, the air-yeeting ensues.
There you go.
The next day, she issues another warning by showing Lorraine a vision of her daughter floating motionless in the river. But since they refuse to back off, Bathsheba decides to make this more than just a threat. Like Christine at the old Arnold estate, Judy is also woken up by a ghostly pulling at her ankle. She gets up and discovers that Bathsheba has actually freed the cursed Annabelle doll from its case and finds the benevolent witch rocking with it in a chair. This is the biggest
That's tough because that's two strong ass demons in one room, bro.
threat yet, because Bathsheba is not only threatening Judy's safety, but also potentially freeing another powerful entity, Malthus, who is bound to that doll, which is usually sealed inside this case. Nothing more would come of this relationship for almost another year though.
But to keep it 100, damn, that was a
Usually
thumbnail.
sealed inside this case. Nothing more would.
Damn, that was a thumbnail right there. But anyways, look, Valak though. Valak, that motherfucker cold.
Come of this relationship for
Stronger
almost
than
another
both
year,
of them.
as Judy's parents got home just in time to save her, and Annabelle is mysteriously returned to her case. However, that same night, the evil tries to sacrifice another child in Satan's name by using the possessed Carolyn to kidnap Christine and April. Well, I mean, I guess you can't really kidnap your own child, but then again, Carolyn wasn't the one in control. Anyway, her plan was to have the mother sacrifice the child, just as she had with her own child over 100 years before.
Where are we going?
We're gonna watch the one on Valak later tonight.
On a fantastic trip to the Bahamas.
No, they actually go back to the haunted house, believe it or not. When she got home, Drew must have noticed something was wrong and tried to stop her. She took the kids down to the cellar and tried to stab Christine with a pair of scissors. Drew was able to hold her off, and when Ed and Officer Brad Hamilton show up to the scene, it takes all three men to wrestle the scissors out of her hands. They try to carry her out of the house and get her to a church, but this causes bruises to appear all over her body, as they have been since they first arrived there. But also, her skin sears as they try to leave the house.
She won't let her leave the house. What do you mean? If we take her out, the witch will kill her.
They end up tying her to a chair to perform the exorcism, and this causes the entire house to shake and birds to crash in from all directions. When Ed commands Bathsheba to reveal herself, it is her face that pokes through the sheet rather than Carolyn's. She levitates off the ground, inverts, and tries to bust through the ceiling, laughing hysterically at their attempts to stop her, claiming that Carolyn is already gone. She breaks free and goes after April with a pair of scissors, so Ed, in one last-ditch effort, calls Bathsheba out by name and attempts to condemn her back to hell. However, I don't think it was this alone that managed to stop her. Even though she had been possessed, the real Carolyn was still down in there somewhere. She recalls a memory of the day that she and Roger went to the beach with their children, and is able to use that love to push back against Bathsheba. In the end, it was her love for family that helped her overcome a witch who used her own family as a sacrifice to the devil, and she's able to spit back out the toxic part of Bathsheba that resided within her. That is the last that the Perrin family saw of Bathsheba Sherman, but that does not mean that this entity's story is over quite yet. The spirit was caught in the children's music box, somehow, and taken back home with the Warrens to be sealed away in their cursed artifact museum for safety, which all worked out just fine for almost a year. It was September of 1972 when the Warrens were away on a case and hired a babysitter for Judy. The babysitter has a friend over to help celebrate Judy's birthday, and the friend accidentally sets free Malthus, the Annabelle demon, who, as we saw with Judy in November, happens to be a beacon for other spirits.
It's crazy though, cause look, Malthus, they gotta bless the room twice a month to keep it contained, which is Annabelle. But with Valak, they needed a whole, I think it was like 12 nuns, bro, to take shifts and turns on praying to keep the seal intact. You know what I'm saying? Valak wasn't no joke.
And the house is overrun by many of the ghosts that Ed and Lorraine had locked up over the years. Now, we don't
I actually think Valak is like one of the 9 kings of hell or something like that.
See Bathsheba take on a visible form during this chaos, but we do see this.
Or is that Paimon? I think Paimon is one of the 9 kings. I can't remember. It's too many damn demons. Yiker.
Judy is pulled out of bed by the ankle, just as her and Christine Perrin had been by Bathsheba the prior year. Could this be an example of Malthus and Bathsheba teaming up against Judy, just as they had in The Conjuring? Or is this simply a case of Malthus having learned from Bathsheba and deciding to take Judy's ankle into...
Yeah, and Malthus, he like one of the oldest demons type shit to where he got hella tricks to deceive.
Either way, it seems like old Bath will never quite be done causing trouble in the human world, whether she materializes in it or not. While we only have these 2 brief interactions between them, there is a lot more to learn about Malthus, and what makes it one of the most powerful entities in the Controverse lore. So click that video on the left to see me analyze the entire history.
It ain't colder than Valak, I say that much. Shall we watch another one or what? I don't know, bro. Wrong one. I don't know. Shall we watch another one? Let me pull it up. Hey, did y'all know there's a haunted house that will pay you $20,000 if you survive? You have to stay there a whole 8 hours. Yeah, you have to stay there a full 8 hours. The longest somebody's ever stayed was, I think, 6 hours. And then they said there was a they said there was a Marine that was good, Brody. They said there was a Marine that passed it, but the guy that came up with the haunted house, he cheated him out of it. Anyways, let's go ahead and get back into it.
To find the origin of Valak, the most feared demon in the Conjureverse lore to date, we must look to...
Valak ain't no joke, yeah.
To find the origin of Valak, the most feared demon in the Conjureverse lore to date, we must look to the legends.
That motherfucker looked like... I'll tell you what he looked like.
The most feared demon...
He looked like... I will not tolerate the belligerence of your insolence. What do you say? Like the string, hell yeah, good looking, Brody.
In the Conjureverse lore to date, we must look to the legends passed down in one small town in Romania. The tales tell of a duke in the Dark Ages, which puts us somewhere between 500 and 1000 CE. He built a great castle, which would later be known as the Abbey of St. Carta. Hidden in the dungeons was a summoning ground, carved with the serpentine symbol of a mythical being known as Valak. The people in town feared the Duke because he wrote countless texts on witchcraft and rituals to call upon these evil forces.
Boy, I hope you're having a good day, buddy.
These spells to open the gateway between our world and the underworld. By sacrificing 5 people as a part of his spell, the Duke would allow Valak to come through and walk amongst the living. But as Valak rose through the crevices, the church, who had caught wind of the foul things happening there, stormed the castle and interrupted the liturgy.
I think those are like the Crusades or the Templar Knights.
They attempted to seal the gateway using liquid from the Holy Grail, and while this appeared to cause the portal to close back up, this seal would not last forever. To learn the secrets of Valak's past, the entity's true purpose, and what it represents for the story and the character's future, stick around.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite demon.
Welcome
and
to
I know that sounds crazy to say, but this like my favorite demon though, bro.
History. My name is Professor C's
World,
and you better pay attention this time, you little piece of shit. In today's lesson, we're going over what I consider to be the main boss of the Conjuring franchise. Like its counterpart Malthus from the Annabelle spin-offs, Valak is based on a mythological deity from the Lesser Key of Solomon, a series of grimoires on demonology. It's divided into 5 books, one of which is called Ars Goetia, a textbook guide to conjuring demons. In Annabelle, Ars Goetia was replaced with this textbook called The Devil's Welcome. But to learn about Valak, we need to turn the clock back even further and look into the pages of these mysterious texts found in a tomb just outside the Abbey of St. Carta. 2 of them have piercing yellow serpentine eyes, much like the eyes of Valak and anyone else the demon takes control of. This suggests that these books, unlike The Devil's Welcome, may specifically be about Valak. The snake eating its own tail symbol is commonly associated with Valak in the movie, but I'll come back to that shortly. In Ars Goetia, there are 72 demons said to have been commanded by the Israeli king Solomon. They range from kings, dukes, princes,
Solomon looked a little black, didn't he?
Solomon. They range from kings, dukes, princes, marquises, knights, presidents, and earls. Valak is considered a president of hell. In the mythology, Valak looks a lot different than it does in the Conjuring movies, but there are some references to the mythological version that you may not have noticed in the movies. On one page of the book, there is a boy-like form with a snake coming out of its mouth. This is likely a reference to how Valak is depicted in the Lesser Key of Solomon, as an angelically winged boy riding on a 2-headed dragon. In the movies, Valak is a shapeshifter, whose form seems to change based on what makes its victims most uncomfortable. There's also this image. Valak is commonly associated with a snake. Serpent symbols can be found throughout the monastery, and there are multiple occasions where the demon is introduced as Valak, the defiler, the profane, the Marquis of Snakes. The bird is probably there to represent Malthus, an Earl of Hell in mythology, who you may know as the demon who's connected to the Annabelle doll. I did an entire video on the history of Malthus if you're interested. That would also leave the question of who these other 2
I'm gonna watch only half of Valak, and we'll watch the other half later.
In future Conjuring movies. On another page, you'll see a more familiar sight, the nun form of Valak, which seems to be its favorite form to use, but there may be a reason that we see the nun.
If you see a ghost like in nun form, is because it's basically to mock
On the side, you'll notice another picture of a snake eating its own tail. This is known as an Ouroboros, a mark seen in many ancient cultures as a symbol for the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. We don't exactly know what Valak's endgame is.
It's a cycle, bro. Like every time, you feel me?
But we know that it has a strong desire to possess, as explained in The Conjuring 2. Perhaps by possessing someone and moving into a new body, Valak feels a new sense of life, and the Ouroboros is a sign of the tendency to go from body to body, creating a cycle of new demonic possessions. The text written in the book isn't legible, but Father Burke does read some of it aloud, and I am going to roll it. So roll it.
And out of the ground formed every beast of the field, every the sky, whatever the man called a living creature, that was its name. Valak.
This passage is part of the biblical text of Genesis 2:19. So I looked up the meaning of that passage and found.
See, I'm trying to tell you, man, it's all hand in hand. You know, demons and the good guys and the bad guys is all hand in hand. Like
the following. The act of naming something is meaningful in the book of Genesis. This often implies
they're right in
rule
their
and
way, we're right in our way, you know what I mean?
This may explain why Lorraine is eventually able to defeat Valak, but we'll get there when we get there. Now you may be thinking, this Valak guy sounds like kind of a bad dude going around and possessing people and crap. I mean, who would actually want to summon Valak? If we go back to the mythological readings of Ars Goetia, it describes the benefits of calling upon this malevolent force. He perfectly...
Alright, y'all, I'm finna get up out of here. I just wanted to stream for today. I'm mostly gonna be uploading YouTube shorts today, so. But it's your boy Black Sand Prince. I love y'all. Mental health is the new wealth. Make sure you take care of yourself. You feel me? Take care of yourself, man, or else you ain't gonna survive. Take care of y'all.